Good evening, Vancouver. Welcome back to Canucks After Dark. It is a Tuesday, January 21st, and another week where we're going to talk about more Canucks losses than wins, which is starting to become an annoying pattern. Another week of JT Miller trade rumors that got apparently really close to materializing and then didn't happen. So we've got a lot to get into tonight, but as always, joined by my co-host, Canuck Clay. How are we doing this evening?
Parker, I'm going to talk about my bowling for 5 seconds. I sucked, and I sucked really bad. Okay, the Canucks, at least they were in it till the end. I wasn't in my bowling matchup, but I'm glad to be with you. I know we had to move from yesterday to today, but hopefully we can still chat a bit about this game and talk more importantly about all of the big issues that are surrounding this team. But how are you? How was your what did you have last year? Hockey, right?
I had hockey last night. We lost. So it hasn't been a good couple of days here.
This losses all around for us. Oh
yeah, I'm feeling under the weather too. Like everything's going the wrong way at the moment, but it's okay because maybe what the Canucks are like. Are they out of the playoff spot still? Did Calgary pass us? Yeah, okay, we're only 1 point out. We're not that far, right?
Yeah.
But now we have to worry about another team because St. Louis is getting close. So it's the wheels are coming off, and it's it's January 21st. There's 3 months left in the season, not even.
Yeah.
I don't based on all the rumors that are sort of surrounding this team, it sounds like we might get worse before we get better.
Yeah, yeah. I guess we can talk about this. Do you think anything changes if we win tonight? And the reason why this is so frustrating, Parker, is Buffalo, correct me if I'm wrong, weren't they the third worst team in the league? Like, aren't they at the very bottom of the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, they are at the very bottom of the Eastern Conference. They had 17 out of 46 games they had won this year.
Awesome.
So it's one of the worst teams in hockey. The only teams with more points, or with less points, I should say, are the teams that had the last 2 first overall picks in San Jose and Chicago.
Wow.
And it's a team that, frankly, the Canucks played a pretty good hockey game. Okay. And then they had 2 nearly identical defensive lapses in their own zone in the third period that blew that game away from them. And they had a few chances to get it back. Luukkonen played really well. But again, it's a repeating, it just keeps repeating itself where last year, we say it every week, they were 26-0 at one point when leading after 2 periods. They have now lost, I believe, 6 games in overtime, and this is now their first regulation loss after entering the second period. So a total of 8 points that they had firmly in their grasp that last year they closed out consistently, that this year they haven't. And that's the difference between being outside of a playoff spot and being third in the Pacific.
Well, and I've admitted to everyone, and people know that on Tuesday night I can't watch games, can't go to games because I'm getting my butt kicked bowling. So I'm going to trust you, Parker, as I always do, to run at least the first bit where you tell me about the game. I might ask you a couple of things that I kind of saw out of the corner of my eye. And then I know we don't spend too much time on the game because there's so much to talk about between suspensions and trades and Patrick Allvin talking but not really saying anything. But I'll definitely let you, as always, steer the ship for the first bit because all I saw is I looked up and I saw a nice PD snipe. I saw a nice deflection or some good work from Phil DiGiuseppe. And then I saw some really passive goals from the crease. And then I saw we lose.
Yep. Yeah, look, the Canucks, the first period was fairly non-eventful. The shots ended up being 8-7. Tage Thompson scores a pretty nice goal late in the first. Really, it was a pretty uneventful period. Not a lot going on. Second period, the Canucks were good, right? They get that Phil DiGiuseppe goal off of a nice play off of a bank off the wall, and that Pettersson goal. This was the shift, and we've had a few of those over the years, and you think back, we need more. The last 20 years, you'll find a few YouTube videos titled "The Shift." The Canucks against I think Calgary where Daniel Sedin scores, and there's a handful of those. This was a lot like that where the Canucks have possession in the zone for a good minute. It feels like they get a couple of changes, including getting, I believe, Desharnais off the ice for Quinn Hughes when they had possession in the zone for a while. And just everything's going the Canucks' way. A broken stick ends up with a forward not having a stick because he handed it back to a defenseman. So you got a guy with the wrong stick. You got the forward without one. Luukkonen loses his stick at one point as well, and eventually the puck finds Elias Pettersson, who has the shot to put that one away. And it's looking like, man, the Canucks are kind of rolling right now, right? They just had a really good shift from their top line. They're doing well. They end up being the better team in the second period. And all that momentum just sort of went out the window in the third. They basically turned a game that they were up 2-1, and they did exactly what they did last year, which was try to just close the lanes and shut it down. And once again, it failed. It's the same strategy of just shut the game down and we'll find a way to just squeak it out. And it didn't work, right? You look at the shots and you say, 13-10 in favor of Vancouver in the third. They must have been, playing fairly evenly. But no, because almost all those Buffalo shots came in the first, 13 minutes. I think the Canucks had like 6 or 7 in the last 2 minutes of that third period. So they really just sat on their heels, let Buffalo come to them. And both of these Buffalo goals are off of icings, unforced icings that the Canucks had. The second one being, a Hughes bank pass to Sherwood that he just missed. And Buffalo wins the ensuing faceoff. They make a play to the middle where they find a soft spot both times right at the, on the inside of the faceoff circle. And they beat Demko pretty clean. So a couple of things to be concerned about, right? Those icings you didn't need to have, right? A couple silly mistakes. Defensively in their own zone, they're allowing these high danger shots. And Demko's not saving them. So there's a lot of issues to go around here.
Well, I appreciate the breakdown. Good. I didn't have to spend. Well, I've actually technically I've spent the money because I've already bought my season tickets. But thank you. I don't have to watch the highlights now. I do want to recognize and speak of appreciation. Adam Lee comes in. The loss does not deter his generosity. 5 membership gifts. They go to Calvin, Caleb, Strosho, Daniel, and Jed. So thank you, Adam. And thank you, Justin, for the $5 donation. Tough Lossing is a team we should beat. I agree. Inconsistency is our biggest issue. We agree. But at least we won't release an organizational statement like the Oilers. And we will get to that as well. So thank you, Justin. And thank you, Adam, for donating despite the bad mood that I'm sure we're all in tonight.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yeah. It was a tough one to watch because Remember how comfortable it felt, especially once we got to this time of the year last year, going into the third period with a lead. It just became a running joke. It's like, they just win these, right? Yep. And now it's the exact opposite. We go into the third period, and I'm thinking, I don't gamble, but it seems like pretty smart money to go the other way. And even the last game on Saturday night, I was at a bar in Victoria with my hockey team. Yeah. And we're all hanging out. We're watching this game, and it's 3-2 going into the third. And we're thinking like, they lose this game, don't they? Like they just find a way to lose. And of course they didn't. They found a way to win that one. But man, it's not a very good feeling right now.
Okay, so we got a few things to get to. So actually, last 3 questions. Tell me about Pettersson's game. Tell me about Miller's game, and tell me about Demko's game.
I liked Pettersson's game tonight.
Okay,
I thought he was decent. He had a couple mistakes on passes, which is not usually his weakness. He had a couple passes that just he had one to Besser on a scoring chance that was just outside of the wheelhouse that caused him to take an extra second, gave Luukkonen some time to reset. There's just a couple plays where you'd like to see a quicker decision and a slightly better one and a little bit better execution. But on the other hand, he was making some good plays on zone entries. I think he possessed the puck well when it was on his stick. It wasn't getting knocked off very easily. And of course that goal was one you want to see, right? Frankly, I think he had a fine game. Miller was the second one you said?
Yep. How's he?
Miller was fine. Do you have his face-off stats in front of you? Felt like he did well there.
Yeah, I got it.
66.7 at the very least.
Okay.
So 1/2 of his face-offs, had one really bad play early in the third, I want to say, or maybe late in the first. I just remember it was near the middle of the game, but it was definitely on the side the Canucks shoot twice. And it was just a from essentially on the wall, in line with where the top of the circle would be, and a pass to the far point, and he just didn't get enough on it, and it was just broken up for a chance the other way. Which to his credit, you saw him swear immediately and start skating hard back. So
Okay, good,
and
good.
he gave, and I think they showed him on the at the bench after, and he gave a little my bad, and they didn't score off of it, so it was fine.
Yeah.
Other than that, he had one really nice pass to Pettersson late, really good scoring chance, and Pettersson executed that shot perfectly. It was right at the near post. Luukkonen made a great stop. Other than that, Miller wasn't super recognizable out there.
Okay.
Like I think he had a good game, but nothing spectacular. Obviously,
how about our
he's
goalie?
credited with 4 shots and an assist?
Okay, cool. How about our goalie?
Yeah, he looks. There was a couple spots where he looked a little defensive, and then there was a couple other spots in the second period, especially where he looked a little bit more athletic. Like he was making a bit of a slide over and punching the puck to the corner on one play on a shot from his blocker side. But then the other ones where it's just he just looks a little slow still. Like he doesn't look like he's set perfectly on all these plays, and it's tough because I'm not like comparing it 1-to-1 to tape from last year, the year before.
Sure.
But man, the guy's got a save percentage in the 800s right now. Like he's clearly not 100% yet. And I know I don't even think Lankinen was even on the bench. No, Sheila was the backup because Lankinen I think is sick. And Demko's now started 3 in a row where, he allows 2 goals on 15 shots to Edmonton. He allowed a lot of goals against LA. He allowed the 5. Did he allow 5 or was it 4? 5 goals on 21 shots against LA. So he just hasn't had one of those like statement games where he's back. Everything's just been a bit of a struggle.
Right. I will say, however, though, yes, there was only 15 shots, but some of the quality of saves he had to make against Edmonton were really good, like tips and side to side. So, it's interesting. If Lankinen wasn't sick, Parker, I thought that they should go Lankinen because he hasn't played in about a week, and then go Demko against Edmonton again because he just basically beat them. Well, not just, he did beat them just 3 days ago, right? So, but because Lankinen wasn't sick, Tuckett said he wants to get Demko on a run, and you're right though. It kind of like the whole team, good game, bad game, and it's tough. Okay, so PD was good. I didn't care if it's a low bar or whatever. He was good. Miller was okay, and Demko was okay. Okay, man, and it doesn't get any easier. Edmonton on Thursday and Washington on Saturday.
No, and really like the clock keeps ticking, right?
Yeah,
we're down to 36 games until the end of the season. And you've got a team to leapfrog, right? And you can be like, they're 1 point back and there's a lot of time left. But the leapfrogging a team can be hard, right? Because you can go on a run, but they can go on a run too, right? And it's when those runs happen. If the Canucks go into the sort of gauntlet that they have here, right, where they have the Oilers, the Capitals, the Blues, who are now right on their tail, right? These are three decently, like 2 hard games and one that normally they should win, but lately we don't know. If the Canucks slide here and lose these 3, which isn't out of the realm of possibility, the Flames have Buffalo on Thursday. They have Minnesota on Saturday. They have the Jets and Capitals, but they can win. They can get a win or 2 out of those, and suddenly it's a 4-point gap instead of a 1-point gap, and they still have a game in hand. And then the panic starts to set in because the first 30 games, I was saying, like, I'm not going to panic at all until we're like 30 games into the season, because I think they were so good last year.
Yes.
That whatever struggles they have, they'll turn around at some point.
Sure.
But eventually they're going to run out of time for that turnaround to happen.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get uncomfortable. I still think they could have this run with 15 games left in the season and be like, oh, they're finally clicking, they finally got it together, and they're hot going into the playoffs. I don't want to have to risk that.
Yes. One interesting thing, Parker, is and you kind of alluded to it when you named some of Calgary's next opponents, is for the home games for Calgary and Vancouver, a lot of them will be facing similar opponents just because of the nature of travel, especially the Eastern Conference teams that do their West Coast road swing, right? So on that, they're always going to face, in some sort of order, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. So Yeah, you're right. We're going to both play the Buffaloes. We're both playing the Washingtons, teams that are traveling. Obviously, the away games, that's different because you don't follow the same rhythm. So on one hand, you're right. We're 1 point behind with one game more played. It's just it's a race now. It really, really is. And who would have thought that we're talking about a race for the 8th and final playoff spot, only to earn a date with either Vegas, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Dallas, or Edmonton.
Yeah, and last year we went in and we said, look, like Edmonton's going to be tough to beat. Vegas is going to be tough to beat in the playoffs. Dallas, Colorado, but they felt beatable, right?
Yeah.
With the way the team was playing, it was like, look, this team can hang with anybody and eke out some tight wins.
Sure.
I don't get that vibe right now, right?
Yeah.
You watch that game against Edmonton and you get a little bit of it, but you watch the game against LA a couple nights earlier, and like this team looks dysfunctional. Like there's nothing clicking. They're like they allowed 3 goals to the Kings in like the first 10 minutes, I want to say.
Yeah, it was awesome. I was there. It was great.
10 minutes.
Yeah, it was great.
It's ridiculous. Like you're out of a game before it even starts at home. Yeah. Like it's getting silly at this point.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the suspension first because I was going to ask you. I know you guys were making your annual hockey team trip. Did you see the brouhaha at the end of Saturday night's game?
Yep, we did.
Okay,
we did. We didn't have sound on at the bar though, so it was a little tough to. And they were like kind of small TVs, a little far away. So it was tough to, to get super locked in, and also we're focusing on the last seconds more so. But
of course.
I did watch the highlights and everything after the fact. So yeah, I mean,
first reaction. So when you saw, and we don't have to go through everyone's read about it. Everyone's been hearing the complaints. We can talk about the Edmonton stuff in a second, but we don't have to go through the fact that Garland made a smart play because the Canucks they got to touch the puck for them to call a penalty, and they weren't going to touch the puck. So why not do whatever you can? But I'm curious, having said that you couldn't hear anything because you were at a bar, did you know that they were also looking at the Myers-Bouchard thing, or was that a surprise, or did you actually see it out of the corner of your eye?
I didn't see the Myers-Bouchard thing at all.
I saw it. It was, in fact, it was bad.
Yeah, so I still haven't seen that part. I missed that entirely. But yeah, I did see Garland sort of, on top of McDavid, and then, but the funny thing is after I saw, everyone was like, oh, but Garland was on top of him. I'm like, but McDavid was on top of him too for like the same amount of time. Like they was like they were like grappling, and then
UFC, yes,
they switched who had the mount, and then they both got up, and they cross checked him in the face, which you can't do. Which, so I thought, look, it was 2 guys going at it and being chippy and fighting each other. And then one of them cross-checked the other in the face. And then I saw a lot of people say, hey, look, does McDavid get anything if Myers doesn't do the same thing on the other side of the screen where it's, now, well, what, they're going to only suspend Tyler Myers and let McDavid off for something very similar?
So before you go to bed, Parker, go look at the Myers one because it's not funny. But what happens is as the whistle gets blown, Myers does a check. He's trying to finish a check, but it looks late because the whistle's blown. So he finishes a check on Bouchard in the corner. Then they kind of whack at each other with sticks. And then Myers just goes, boom. I don't know why I'm laughing. It was just so stupid.
Yeah.
It was just so silly. So yes, they get twin suspensions, 3 games each, not because they had to be equitable, but because the Department of Player Safety said the same thing about both. They're intentional, they're aggressive movements. They did not. Principal point of contact was the other guy's face, and you have the whole city of Edmonton up in arms.
Yeah, I mean, we knew this was going to happen, right? And it's quite funny. Look, let me be completely honest with you. The Myers suspension, I think, matters more to the Canucks right now than the McDavid one does to the Oilers, right? For the next game, the Canucks Oilers game. Okay, McDavid being out of the lineup is more critical to that game than Tyler Myers being out of the lineup. But for the other 2 games that these guys are both suspended for, the Canucks, Myers has been one of their better defensemen, and this Canucks team doesn't have defensemen. Edmonton, sure, they lost to the Capitals. They might have anyways without McDavid, and guess what? They're doing fine. They're 1 point out of first in the Pacific.
We're 1 point out of a playoff spot.
Vegas has lost 4 in a row, so they're fine. And they've got a 10-point buffer on the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs, and they're going to be dangerous when they do. These games are a lot less critical for them than they are for us. So, look, it's it sucks seeing your superstar player be out for 3 games. But if you're gonna call, I feel like, there's a lot of people who are saying like, oh, you gotta, like Corey Perry be like, oh, you gotta protect the superstars.
Yeah.
And my opinion is, well, if everyone just follows the rules of the game and everything's enforced the same on everybody, then the superstars are going to separate themselves from the pack. Now, in the NHL currently, superstars tend to get abused on the ice a lot because usually, like, if you draw one penalty, it's probably less likely you're going to draw a second or a third later on in the game. So you can get physical, you can abuse these guys a little bit, but you shouldn't give them special treatment over a suspension, right? Like that's not how that works.
Yeah, well, at least the Edmonton Oilers are supporting him. The exact quote: "We support him through the process because he needs so much support." Because I don't even want to make fun of it, because players that do need support, it's for really important things: mental health, substance abuse. So I think that's what's the maddening thing about this, Parker. It's almost tone deaf. And I would say this. I promise. I would say this if the Canucks released a statement like this. If Pettersson, Hughes, or Miller got tackled, but they wouldn't. It's almost, and I tweeted this. Yeah, exactly. And I tweeted this. I said, you think from reading some of the quotes from the Oilers players, media, and fans that it was Connor Garland who cross-checked Connor McDavid in the face and not the other way around. Like, it's so backwards.
Yeah, it's such a funny statement because it's like, oh no, McDavid now gets to take 3 games off. Yeah. So he gets a week to just sort of relax. And looking at their schedule right now, he gets tonight's game, Thursday's game, Saturday's game. So he will have had 9 days off between games. Yeah. The poor Kraken on the 27th, they're probably going to get blown up by him. But like, oh no, he has to spend 3 games not playing, and he's still, I guess he misses out on a little pay, but he makes 12.5 a year, so he's probably okay. Yeah. It's just like, oh, you're supporting him through this difficult time. Like, oh, he's missing 3 hockey games. Like,
I know. What's the, yeah, it just, for me, it was almost, I thought it was almost, maybe it was going a bit far. It's almost disrespectful to people who actually need support through an actual process. Whatever. Maybe I'm just being hater.
Yeah. Unless McDavid's extremely broken up about this whole thing.
That's true. He could be very sad. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
But it's like, I don't know. These are adults, man. Like,
Justin says the statement was a joke. Fangirl says the statement was laughable. And speaking of Fangirl, thank you. A $7 donation. I think this speaks to Parker's heart a little bit more. He knows more about NFL than I do. Inconsistent Canucks, Chiefs versus Bills coming on Sunday. Why did it have to be the Bills? Quick, who's going to win that between Chiefs and Bills?
I think the Chiefs win it, but it will make me miserable if they do.
Yeah. And the other one's Philly and Washington, right? That's weird. That's a weird one. Philly and Washington.
Yeah.
Washington.
Jaden Daniels is sick, man. I love Washington in that one.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. We'll recap those next Monday after they play on the weekend. Oh man. So yeah, when you watch the Tyler Myers one, let me know what you think and shoot me a message tomorrow or whatever, because it's kind of funny. Like it's. Yeah, I like how the Draisaitl says, I guess we're not about protecting the best players in the game. And I said, oh, that's nice. You called Tyler Myers one of the best players in the game. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he is. He's a Calder winner. McDavid's not.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay, so we got a couple more things to get to. Let's talk about, did you get a chance to watch or listen to the Patrick Allvin media availability from Monday?
I read a summary of it, but I did not listen or watch it.
Okay. I can say, because I did watch it. I did a quick vlog about it. He didn't really say anything of substance, Parker. It was good that he addressed the media. He addressed the fans. He does this, I think they do this every mid-year. So it would be misguided if someone thought that he was doing a press conference just to announce a trade. And he didn't say a lot in terms of move any storylines. It was more of kind of what we expected. No movement on Besser, interested in Lankinen, proud of the way Petey and Miller have fought through adversity. But one thing that's making the rounds, you may have seen this, Parker, is when he was talking about Petey, he basically called Miller their 1C, and he said that Petey is learning how to be a star. The 5th highest paid player in the NHL, but he's learning. So he's learning how to be a star. That's a bad look.
It's not a great look. And again, I always try to give a little bit of leeway on guys who don't speak English as their first language. I
agree.
But also it's like, it's not a good look, right? That's not what you want to be hearing from your player who's on like a 50-point pace, whatever his pace is, making an ungodly amount of money. Not ideal.
Yeah, and I think I think the interesting thing, Parker, is he didn't Patrick Levine did not make excuses. He didn't use the injuries as an excuse, but he was also very quick to point out that the injuries were a factor. So I think he walked that line okay. And obviously he's hoping that with everyone back, and you can call Joshua and Juleson minor injuries, right, compared to the core. But we have our core back now, and it hasn't made a difference. It's weird.
No, it hasn't looked great, has it?
Yeah.
Hronek's looked like an improvement, but hasn't moved the needle a ton. He's put a few pucks into shin pads that I've seen. Yeah, it's tough, right? Yeah, Joshua is day to day. We don't know what the latest is on that, but imagine in the next couple of games he should be coming back. It's it's such a weird spot because again they haven't told us what kind of team they are yet. They haven't told us if they're a contender or if they're just gonna let this year go.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I want.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking about this, Parker, and I was explaining this to a friend of mine who watches our show, and we were talking about a month ago, or say 2 months ago, late October, early November. You and I both talked, and we agreed that the window is pretty small. The window is pretty short with contracts and the way this team was. And this was before all the drama. So you and I talked on the show about the fact that depending on, context matters, depending on where the Canucks are, we would both be okay with them making a run this year, given that the window was short. But that was before we knew the Canucks were basically out of a playoff spot. So it's funny how it changes. And this Four Nations face-off that's for the last 2 weeks of February or middle of February, 2 weeks, it almost extends the decision-making timeline. Because for JT Miller, you can trade him now, you can trade him before trade deadline, or you can trade him in the offseason, or you don't trade him. Like there's 4 viable options out there. I don't know if anything's changed for you, given all the rumors about the Rangers and stuff on the weekend.
Yeah, the rumors are interesting, for sure. Yeah, because I think we sort of said, look, the window is sort of this Quinn Hughes contract, right?
Yeah.
He got this year and 2 more, and we said, great. With last year included, that's sort of a 4-year window that you can do work to extend, right?
Okay.
But that should be your target, because you've got those 3 years of Hughes. You've got 3 years of or one more year of Pettersson's, or 1 more year. You got like 5 more years of Pettersson's contract. but you have little wrinkles thrown in, right? You've got Besser being a UFA after this year, but that's something you can navigate, right? It's one guy. Your bottom few defensemen are UFAs. Kevin Lankinen's UFA, but like looking at like core window, that was your core window, right? It was those years, but. Again, there's always work you can do to extend it, right? Because Quinn Hughes is going to make like $14 million once that's up, and that's $5 million, $6 million bucks in your cap that you don't have anymore. Yeah. But you can make moves happen to extend that window, but that's at the cost of your current window, essentially, right? So they could say, okay, if this year's a write-off, that now only really gives us 2 years of this window. I don't like our odds, especially with how this year's gone, right?
Yes.
So you can say, well, if getting rid of JT Miller is part of our plan, how can we make that trade to lessen our odds maybe this year and maybe a little bit next year, but increase our odds 2 years from now, right? How can we push that window back a little bit and then work on compiling a team that's going to be perfect for that period of time? That's the tough part. That they need to balance, because right now they're right in the middle. And if this team had this record last year, then this decision becomes really easy. You say, okay, we haven't taken a step. We're still sort of in the mushy middle. We need to get to that next level. Let's get rid of a couple guys and restructure and push to make our team a contender for next year. But last year, they were good enough that you're thinking, well, if we just make the playoffs, they have a shot. Yes. So that derails this whole conversation. And luckily, you do sort of have the luxury of time with this Four Nations tournament. But on the other hand, you don't have any time at all, because you're going to, every game that you don't make the moves, whether they're in one way or the other, you're getting held in that middle, right?
Yes.
You're keeping Miller around. That's going to keep you decent enough to stay right around a playoff spot. But if you go trade for defensemen right now, maybe that pushes you up and elevates you into a playoff contender position,
Right.
at the risk of that not working because you're not in that spot currently. So it's a really tough spot to be in.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to ask you about JT Miller more in a second, but this whole thing about Brock Besser is kind of fascinating. I don't know what you think. I'm much in the camp of now that they're either going to trade him or they're going to just let him walk if they need him for that playoff run, because Jake DeBrusk is locked up until 2031, so 6 more years at only 5.5, where we know Besser is going to want some like 8. Let's say just say 8 million. So, and guess what? They're tied in points. Sure, DeBrusk has played 7 more games, but he has 2 more goals than Besser extrapolated. They're basically even in goals, and you're probably saving $2.5 million. So I'm just hearing more and more about, do you think Besser's going to go? And I'm not convinced. You talk about core, if you give Hughes whatever he wants, right? So technically, if you don't make a trade, your guys that are extended to 2030 are Hughes, Hronek, DeBrusk, PD, and Miller, not Besser.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, and if you make that decision that, hey, we're going to try to push our window out, right? That's where Besser falls as well, right? You say, okay, well, he's a UFA next year. We can trade him at the deadline, get some assets that we can then use, whether it's draft picks that you then use as ammunition to build the team, trade for some like 22 to 25-year-olds, or shore up some pieces, some weaknesses that you have, right? You can gain that ammunition. But again, on the other hand, you're like, oh, we're really punting on this season if we're getting rid of Brock Besser. And like my other fear there, look, because I think Brock Besser is going to get paid a number that's going to be more than he's worth, just from a strictly, the way the NHL works, way any hard cap league works. The best team is the team that optimizes their cap the best, right? 'Cause it's going to give you the best roster. I think Brock Besser is probably a net negative if he's making 8+. However, I also find Brock Besser really hard to replace at, like getting rid of Brock Besser. Okay, now you have a hole you have to fill, right?
Right.
You have like, okay, now Connor Garland is your best right winger, right? and he's good, but he's second line good to me. So now you have to go out and get a bona fide star right winger. And that's hard to do, right? Like that's either going to cost you a lot of assets in a trade. It's going to cost you a bit of an overpayment in free agency, like Brock Besser is going to be, right? And then you're going to be like, we need a really good number 1 right winger. Who's available? Oh, it's only Brock Besser. And now here we are again.
Yep. I agree with everything you said. And, maybe they have high hopes for Lekharmaki, but that is 3 or 4 years down the road from now. Not, Lekharmaki's not going to be the best replacement next year already, or in the next 2 years. Although I'm hopeful. Okay. JT Miller. Now, there's so many layers to the story, Parker. And one of them is people are saying, like, all the insiders are saying a trade is imminent, and whatever your definition imminent is, this week, trade deadline. And there's thoughts of the Canucks are willing to, they know that they don't have any bargaining power, both with other teams and with Miller himself, Ryan Kessler 2.0 in terms of no move, all those things. So I guess the debate out there is, do you still make a move for the sake of making a move, knowing, addition by subtraction, all those kind of proverbs or adages, versus really taking the long approach and I don't know, just waiting until maybe offers are better in the summer. I don't know. It's so complicated. I mean, complicated. It's not the right word. It's fascinating. Fascinatingly complicated.
There's a lot of layers, right? Because on one hand, you can look at it as, this is a really good hockey player that losing him is a huge hit to this team.
Sure.
So in the short term, getting rid of JT Miller is not good, unless you think it's going to make Elias Pettersson the best player in the world, which maybe it does. Who knows at this point? Nothing makes sense. But on the other hand, we look at this contract that he's in year 2 of, with 5 more years to go after this, at $8 million a year.
Yep.
If your window is this 2 years of Quinn Hughes' contract, that's sort of what we looked at this JT Miller contract as when it was signed, right? We said, hey, by the end of it, probably not going to look great, but for these few years of our window, it's going to be worth the hurt later on.
Right.
However, if the hurt is now and JT Miller is, not playing as well as he was last year, and we can look at it as, okay, is he just having a down year with, the personal stuff seemingly going on, and that would explain a lot of it.
Yes.
Is that part of the problem? Is that the whole problem? Or is it also just being on the wrong side of 30 where a lot of players start their decline? And, is this one of those things where, hey, next year we're back to, 95-point JT Miller, or is it more of the same with, the defensive issues and, only scoring, being on like an 18 goal pace for the season at $8 million?
Yeah.
Doesn't really cut it. So it's one of those ones where, if you're extending, if you want to extend that window and punt on this season, your best bets are going to be getting rid of Miller and Besser. And it's a tough thing to do because, again, they're so hard to replace.
It's funny. Miller, I saw an Athletic article where they basically detail his profile as seasons, and he literally has one good year, one bad year, one good. And when I say good year, 100 points, 95 points, right? Emotional heartbeat of the team, leader, all those things. Bad year, he's still getting hit between 70, 80 points, but slamming a stick behind Colin Delia's head, right? Not back checking. So this is technically, it's right on cue. It's his off year. So maybe he's going to be really good next year, but I don't know if it's going to be in the Canucks uniform.
Yeah, it's the tough part. And especially with the rumors on what the return would be, right? The Canucks are kind of handicapped here on what their optimal return would be, right?
Good
because
point.
every team in the league knows that they want to get rid of him, seemingly.
Yes.
And he has that no move, so he can control where he goes, which sounds like he's fairly open to go into the Eastern U.S., which opens up there's a lot of teams over there at the very least. So, you have the one hand of sort of maybe a bidding war of a bunch of teams trying to get this guy because, man, what an ad for a playoff team he might be, especially in a new environment. Like, that might do wonders for him. But on the other hand, there's so many reasons why if I'm like when there was something floated about the Devils 5 days ago or something, I opened the Reddit thread for it, and every comment was someone with the Devils icon next to their name being like, please no, please, why are we doing this? Let's not do this. Guys, what are we doing? So from that perspective, I'm looking at it like, well, maybe we should get rid of this guy. But on the other hand, like, you're not going to get a lot for him because it's a very risky acquisition for another team to make.
If you had to guess, does Miller get traded before the end of this month, by trade deadline, or in the off season, or no trade?
It feels like before the end of this month. I'd be very confident in saying it'll happen before the deadline. But the thing is, I don't really think losses and wins affect it that much at this point. You could say, oh, they're losing more games. They should just, punt and get rid of them. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, well, we need them because we're losing more games and we need to find a way to make this work. So it's impossible to tell. But it feels like the cord has been cut already.
Sure. Before we go to the people for a few minutes, Canucks, well, not Canucks, the NHL, as they've been doing with every single team, they've been naming their quarter century teams. So key point, everyone, quarter century since 2000. So that's why Pavel Bure is not on here. I saw some people saying, where's Bure? Because he played for us in 94, 95, 96, 97. So first team was Naslin with the Sedins, Edler, Hughes, Luongo.
Yeah.
And the second team.
That's a gimme, right?
Yeah,
like,
there's no.
That all sounds right.
Yep, I agree. Second team. So people are saying that Bertuzzi or Burrow should be on it. So it's Kessler and the two best friends, Miller and Pettersson, and then Bieksa, Oland, Demko. What do you think of that?
It sounds about right to me. I mean, just going through that list, right? Like, JT Miller has been here he's been here for 5 full seasons, right? And he's been over a point per game for that whole stretch, and he's carried this team to an extent into the playoffs and through the playoffs last year, and and I think Bertuzzi's got a little bit of Steve Moore hanging over still. I think it has a bit of impact potentially on that. And like Burrows was fantastic, and
Yeah.
I could definitely see him being in there. But again, like Elias Pettersson's a 100-point player, and that lends a little bit of credence. Recency bias makes it tougher, right?
Sure.
But the last 2 years, 102 points and 89 points for Pettersson. 3 straight 30-goal seasons. And he's been here for, this is his 7th season now. So he's been here long enough to qualify, so to speak.
Did you hear what BX said?
I did see what BX said, yes.
So for anyone who doesn't know, BX said this on his Instagram. He says, low key, if the second team, which BX is part of, doesn't kill each other in practice, then we're running the first team out of the building. I love it.
Yeah. It's so funny because there's a lot of personalities on that side of things.
Yeah, I do like Olin over Edler, but that's splitting hairs at this point. Edler was the franchise leader in everything until he was demolished every single record in half the time.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, Parker's playing hurt a little bit, but he would never admit it. But I'm gonna give him a bit of a reprieve. So let's do 5 minutes or so quickly of questions. So we might not go for the full hour today, but we'll still give you a good 45 to 50 minutes. And we started 50 minutes late, and that was for me because I was getting my butt kicked bowling. So let's go to the people. We'll go 5-10 minutes, and then we'll wrap up. What do you guys think? Peter says 2 questions. Where are you guys with PD? It's strange how he went from putting up 100 points 2 seasons ago, and do you think Tocchet is holding him back? I've said on the show, I've heard that PD is scared of Tocchet. I don't know if that's true, but sometimes it kind of acts like it.
Yeah, it's funny. I think back to a handful of years ago. I played like I was pretty new into beer leagues. I was probably like 19 playing on this team. And one of the 45-year-old guys wouldn't get mad with you, but would be mad about mistakes you made when you were on the bench. Like just visibly frustrated. Okay. And it's like you're playing scared to make a mistake at that point, right? Because you don't want to make them mad. It's just uncomfortable, right? So maybe there's a bit of that I could definitely see, especially if it's Tocchet and Miller, both that you're having those issues with. So that's possible. I definitely think the knee is still a part of it. Again, those speed stats showing that he went from like 95th percentile to 50th. That doesn't just happen. So yeah, it's I don't know. It's one of those things where, again, I still think, and I said this a lot last year, I still think he's too good. He's too talented for this to just be what he is now, unless it's a physical issue. So I'm hoping that that's not the case.
That's fair. Fangirl says, how would you change this team's play style? That's a great question because we saw in the very first game of the season, it looked like they were going to score 8,000 goals in that run and gun game in their season opener. Then we remember we've harkened back to last season where they played a really good defensive style, shutting down teams, as you alluded at the start of the show, grab a lead, then shut it down. And now I think they're still past the halfway point of the season, still searching for an identity that works. So what do you think?
Well, it feels like they're trying to reuse last year's identity. Yeah, like it really does, and it's just failed at this point. They still are doing, they're a second period hockey team essentially, and they've been decent enough to go into enough third periods with leads to be a fine hockey team. But instead of playing through the final buzzer, they are letting up and letting other teams back into it, which wasn't a problem last year. Remember last year they would just throw like Bluger and Joshua and Garland out there for 9 of the last 20 minutes and nothing would happen in the Canucks zone. That's just not the case anymore, right? It's like dangerous chances are getting to the net. Demko's not the same guy he was last year, and things aren't working. So clearly, whatever identity they're going for, to me, it feels exactly the same as last year without the execution.
Thank you. Edmund says, who do you think is the favorite? Is it Carolina? Is it Devils? Is it Rangers? Is it Dallas? Those are 4 teams that we've heard in the mix.
Yeah, it still feels like the Rangers. We know that one got seemingly nixed, which we were hoping like, Lafreniere or something like that. And it was like Hedel and Lindgren, which is a little less exciting.
Yeah, it's a little underwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, underwhelming for sure. And then for the Devils, it was like, oh, maybe we get Nemec and Mercer, right? You get your 2C, like sort of a middling 2C. You get a D-man who hasn't worked out there really. He's still, 3 years in the minors, but he's also got a lot of potential and a high upside guy. And then it sounds like those guys' names were never in conversations at all. So I don't know. I think it's still really up in the air. It really feels to me, and again, like it sounded like Saturday was really close to the point where Miller almost didn't play, and then even today we hear like, hey, like conversations are picking up. It feels like to me one team could just step in and take over. Right.
I agree with that.
Like there's all the, like the Islanders and Carolina and the Devils and the Rangers and Dallas. Like there's sort of 5 names swirling around, but another team could just swoop in with a better offer and be like, hey, like we will do this for this, take it or leave it. And suddenly, boom. So like, everything is thrown
Changes
off.
Exactly.
Or some third parties get involved and things get crazy. But yeah, I think to me, I would lean towards the Rangers still.
Totally fair. Is Tocchet the issue? It's such
a hard question. It's such a hard question to know the impact that coaches have, because it's hard for me to look at what this team did last year and what the team did this year and think like, oh, Tocchet's message just isn't working anymore. It's like, well, I feel like I'd be, if the guy took us to 109 points last year and within a game of the conference championship, within a goal, or like so close to a conference championship, I would think, oh, this guy's play style works. We should do what he says. Yeah. But it's such a hard departure, and it's also like, man, we haven't really given this guy a lot of leash if we think he is the problem. But also, he's the 10th most tenured coach somehow in the NHL already. Like it's such a hard question that I think if they got rid of him, I'd be scared of who they'd bring in, just because of the uncertainty out there. But also, if he is part of the problem, it's the easiest thing to change.
Yeah, you're so right. It's easier to change one coach than 18 or 20 players. But I heard them talking about this on the radio today, Parker. It's such a bad look if you move on to your 4th coach in 5 years.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe they don't care about that, right? Green, Boudreau, Tocchet, and then whoever's next. That's bad.
Yeah. And again, it's common around the NHL, right?
Fair.
And you can get away with it if you do like what St. Louis did, where they were like, well, we're not firing our coach because we picked a bad coach. We just thought there was a better one available and we went and got him. Right. Yeah. And I think that's a fairly, that's very defensible.
Yeah.
For the Canucks, like there's none of those guys out there right now, right? Where it's like, whoa, that's like one of the best coaches in the league and he is now a free agent. Yeah, we owe it to ourselves to make that move. Sure. I don't see that happening right now.
Right. Let's end with this one. Do you think a potential JT Miller trade should return more or less value and assets than Horvat? And remember, for Horvat, we got Beauvillier, we got a 1st-round pick who helped with the Hronek trade, and we got Aatu Räty. So it's basically 3 assets for Horvat, if I'm not mistaken.
From a should perspective, JT Miller's a better player. Like,
I agree.
Just generally. The Horvat trade was timed very well because he went on an absolute heater that year, which was very helpful. And Miller's doing the opposite, which to me means even though I think he's the better player, there's the contract hanging over, there's a no move, there's all these things. I think he should return less, just from a strict value perspective. Now, again, the contract's a weird one because the Islanders just went and paid Horvat immediately anyways, which was seemingly odd. What if we just flip him back? Miller for Horvat, 1-for-1.
I'd do it.
I think I would too. That would be so fun.
Wow, wouldn't that be crazy? Yeah, the return did feel very underwhelming for Horvat, and I remember trying to justify, Aatu Räty is going to be awesome. Maybe he'll still be good. 1st-round pick, because Islanders suck, so he'll be in the top half. And then Beauvillier, he just needs an opportunity. Well, Beauvillier lasted half a season. 1st-round pick turned into Hronek, and Aatu Räty, jury's still out. So maybe, we hear this Hedl, Lindgren, and a 1st. That's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Like, or maybe a bit, I don't know, is that better or worse? No, it's about the same thing.
It's about the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, that first you're weaponizing anyways. So you're not picking a
Yep.
guy, in the late 20s if your window's in a couple of years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you do, it's just a piece you're going to trade. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, even Michael Sow says, we got Zadorov kind of from that. And,
Oh, I forgot about that.
Ratu, I think could be a 4C, no problem in this
Yep.
league.
Yep.
But that's, again, you can get those guys anywhere in theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, the Hronik trade is
Okay.
the big part of that. But yeah, I think it's a really tough question. I hope they get more, but I'm prepared to be disappointed.
And lastly, as we always do, we're back to our home base on, and thanks to everyone who showed up tonight, because you remember last Monday we actually put it to you and we said you have two choices: Monday at 7 early about the same day, or Tuesday night at 10, different day. And you guys showed up in full force tonight, which is wonderful. So Parker, presuming that we are doing Monday night, the 27th, there's 3 games. We're in Edmonton, big rematch. We are hosting Ovi and the Capitals. And then we are in St. Louis in the battle of the 9-10 teams of the Western Conference.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So next Monday's a post game too. Cool.
Really priming ourselves up for a 1-2 week, hey?
Is that how you're feeling?
I think so. I mean, look, the Capitals are really good. The Oilers are really good. They won't have McDavid, but we won't have, big man Tyler Myers. That's more.
I think we're going to beat the Oilers, man. I think
we can
with my heart in my head here. Yeah,
I think we can. I think we can beat any of these teams, but they're just not showing it right now, right?
Sure.
And then the Blues, I think they beat. I think they kind of have to, right? Because the Blues are on their tail. That could put them down into 10th in the West. That game, which is a little scary.
I'm going fangirl. I'm going ones. I'm going ones across.
Yeah, I'm gonna say just 1-2 flat.
Okay,
I think
that's fair.
This team showed tonight that they don't need overtime to blow second period leads.
Our piece is 1-0-2. Yeah. As we wrap up here, you guys put your predictions. Next 3 games in Edmonton, hosting Washington, and in St. Louis, and we're back on Monday night, back to our regular time and regular day.
Yeah, kind of a late post.
You all right, buddy? You're gonna survive. You're okay.
Yep, I hope so.
Okay.
We'll be back Monday, 10 p.m., probably 3 hours after that Canucks Blues game, which, as Dan brought up, is on Prime. So if you're unable to watch on Prime, then you at least have us to come to afterwards. And if you don't have Prime, I'm sure you can find another way, because there are ways. All right, we'll wrap up there. Clay, any parting words this Tuesday evening?
Yeah, well, glad that we could get together, Parker. And for anyone wondering, I'm not doing a show tonight. Tonight is my church night, so no point trying to sneak in a half an hour show. So I have shows Wednesday and Thursday of this week. So anyone wants more Canucks talk, we'll see you then. But otherwise, I'm just really, really, really intrigued this week how it's going to go. But I think you made a very good point that what's beyond wins and losses now. If they think they need to make a change to change up the vibe in the room, they're going to do it regardless of how many we win or lose. So I think that was a very, very salient point. That was good.
Yep. 9 games until 4 Nations. So we'll see what happens.
All
right, folks. Thank you all for joining. If you missed any part, you can rewind back to the beginning. You can find it on your favorite podcast platform. If you're watching over on Twitter /X/whatever, come over to the YouTube side. Hit subscribe, hit like, do all that good stuff. Otherwise, have a good Tuesday night. We'll see you next week.